All right. So I realized in watching the last, this is part two of healing with the magic metals. In the first one, I noticed I was a little angry, and I think that has to do with like the current transits. There's like some fire trine shit going on. The moon is about to conjoin Jupiter in Sagittarius. It just left Mercury and is heading towards Mars from Leo, receiving that tight aspect. Like I think it's actually perfected now. I think it's like 7 degrees. 7 degrees of Sagittarius, the moon. So I think that's why I'm feeling so arrogant and indignant. I'm not usually like this, but nevertheless, I don't really see there being a better election at this month to do these. And I don't, I wanted to do it before, I wanted to do it during eclipse season because fuck electional astrology. Um, that being said, let's go ahead and start this PowerPoint and get back into the metals. We've already covered quite a few, but we've got 3 left. Uno, dos, tres. Bam. Is it sharing? It better be. So which did we do? Should we review really quickly in case this is your first video and you have no idea what's going on? I'll link the first one in the description, or maybe I won't. But so we did lead, which was the containment of your own personal power, and like when the body says no, right? It's like your no faculty, which is kind of like establishing the personality and establishing the willpower. As a kid, that's your like terrible twos. No, no. So we start there. And then we kind of move into the dissolution of, the first morning stretch of 10 when your joints crack. It's like coming out of that no state and stretching into a sense of the alignment of your personal power with cosmic power, right? That's the dissolution. And then when you're in the bottom of the ocean, drowning in your own feels, you can do a lot of work there at the bottom of the ocean with iron, and slice through the weight of the weight of the ocean and come back to the surface of the ocean to copper and join the foamy, like Aphrodisian, life-giving conjunction, unfettered by past, past criticism or past the weight of past karmas. You can start acting in a more liberated way with copper once she conjoins, right, that sexual element, when she conjoins with Mars and iron, which creates the child Mercury, which is you'll see, I love Mercury. But baby Mercury, tiny baby Mercury, opens the door to the king and queen, which are the silver, which is distillation, and coagulation, which is gold. And we're going to go into all of that. So let's just do a really quick time lapse through the whole presentation that you've missed. All these beautiful slides that will make no sense to you if you... Wow, how many slides? I'm compensating for something like... I should get more friends. Oh wait, here's correspondences of Mercury. Mercury is ruled by Mercury. Duh. Gemini and Virgo. That's kind of where the powers of this planet reach, or he has rulership over these signs, zodiacal signs. Mercury's androgynous. It doesn't have no gender. Well, no, it does. It's both. Hermaphrodite, hermaphrodite. The gemstones are opal and lapis. This is your communicative, right? Like, this all makes sense, y'all. This is not hard. Like, your spleen is that vitriolic Saturn. I'm not going to go through them all, actually. Let's just focus. The organ is the brain, and then it's your communication with the throat chakra. The elements are ether, which is your omnipresent, everywhere element from which all the others arise. Which makes sense because Mercury is kind of omnipresent and contains all qualities within itself that inherently makes it without quality. If I have all qualities, I have no quality. If I am all colors, there is no color, like black or white. Absence of color or all the colors makes no color. God, I just Mercurius vivens, living mercury. So it's the heaviest liquid on Earth, lead being the heaviest of the metals. So it's the only metal to retain its goddamn liquid state at room temperature. So, in the core of the Earth, when everything was like, there was a planetary disk that was created when all this bullshit was happening and thrown together. And actually, the rotation and the spinning of these like colliding like proto-Earths created this like flattened thin disk. Like literally, it was so, and like this is the new theory of the formation of the moon, right? The moon was formed before the Earth. What do you think about that? So how you think the Earth formed is no longer scientifically like modern. You need to go back and look at new, maybe I'll put that on the link here as like how the moon was created. But essentially, Mercury in that formation of everything was in liquid state. Everything took a final form, right? All the other metals took a final form except Mercury. So it's forever a child and forever has that like the qualities of a child, that curious, communicative, searching, pioneering, I hate that word, those kind of qualities. And so Mercury was known back as far as 2000 BC because it melts so quickly and probably, it's high surface tension. It probably just oozed out of a rock at a fire gathering during a fire dance. Someone's like, something shiny's coming out of there. Probably played with it. Someone probably drank it and died eventually. Or someone, from there, the rest is history. Hydrargyrum, Hg, liquids or silvery water. It was known, its first alloys were 500 BC among the Chinese, I think. Amalgamation is its primary signature. Amalgamation is Mercury's types of alloys, right? An amalgam. So it's the dissolver of metals in the same way water dissolves salt. And it's found at 10 times the normal level in our bodies due to industrialization in soil and water. It is in virtually every single food you eat in unnatural amounts. So I wonder about the spiritual implications of that, because if Mercury is this like communicative force that is kind of deadly, then in some way, maybe if all of our, we have 50 new chemicals in our body than we did like 100 years ago, we have 50 new chemicals in our body. That's why we're all dying. One of them being increased mercury levels. You should not be eating seafood, people. You should not even really be eating sea salt. It's just mainly plastic. But anyway, this is good. What am I talking about? The point is, Mercury might, if the constants of mercury in our bodies is going up as a collective, I just wonder what that does to our sense of connection, because Mercury is so, maybe that's why this technological age, it's like increased, more and more rapid communication. Like the nervous system of the globe is becoming an exo-nervous system, right? Our technologies kind of aren't outside of us. Okay, do you understand that? Our technologies are an extension of our bodies. Our alphabet, our radio, our internet, our even when you use like cars, it's like Evangelion, right? It's your suit. You're connected to it. You drive it. You drive the technology you use. And certainly Mercury as a planet and a philosophical Mercury represents all of that higher learning or higher technology. So like I said, because it has no quality, you can't define it. It doesn't have hardness because it's a liquid. You can't scratch it. It's not ductile. It's not conductive. It doesn't fracture. It doesn't structure, and it has no cleavage. How can you define it then? You can't. It's a very poor conductor, although it is incredibly sensitive to heat. And it expands and contracts reliably and predictably, making it useful for thermometers. However, when it's frozen, it's honestly one of the best conductors, and it's far superior even to silver. It was contained with sheepskin and later iron because iron does not react. So iron, Mercury and Mars as philosophical principles have this disdain for each other. Well, Mercury is pretty neutral in the Ayurvedic system or the Jyotish, but then, or Mars likes Mercury, but Mercury don't like Mars. Mercury facilitates Mars's wars, but it's not reciprocated. Yeah, it was also used to make amalgams with gold. It makes it of primary importance for alchemists, Mercury in this way, because gold does not dissolve. Gold is indestructible. Yeah, the snake is Mercury. It's a symbol of Mercury. It's strong signatures of life and shedding and transformation and renewal and the eternal through the perpetually changing state. The eternal represented through the perpetually changing state. The shedding of death. And certainly if you've seen those fireworks where mercury pellets, they're mixed with manganese or something else, erupt into wriggling, expanding snakes upon contact with the heat. You light them and it looks like a little turd on the ground when you're a kid. That's all mercury pellets. Mercury probably erupted out of a rock placed close to an ancient fire pit. I already said this. Oh, this is cool. Mercury atoms are electrically excited to emit a blue-green light that mimics the solar ultraviolet spectrum. So Mercury exhibits, that's how you can tan, tanning salons. Mercury atoms, that's what that is. Mercury exhibits a breathing pattern when heated almost to its boiling point, at which point it starts sucking in oxygen and produces a yellow-red oxide. Upon further heating, the process is reversed and the mercury expels the oxygen like a metallic lung. So Mercury breathes. And Mercury rules, because it rules Gemini, it has an association with the lungs in the body. Wow, isn't that nice and symmetrical? This entire presentation is symmetrical with medical astrology. If you're a medical astrologer, you're probably getting way more out of this than you other basic witches. Oh, wow, I love this picture. Every time I see this, I cry. This is really bad quality. I should have found a larger image. Who cares? It's too late now. But Mercury here is seen on the right. You kind of have this languishing guy right here sucking up all the attention. But this is the real point. Mercury, he is going down into the underworld, and his job is kind of lonely because he can be everywhere at once. He can go to Olympus, he can go to the mortal realm, he can go to Hades, and he has to kind of do work for all these people because of his compassion and understanding of connecting all these realms is kind of like furthers the evolution of consciousness. But it's kind of a lonely existence. Everything, look at these people clinging to him like fucking vampires. Like that's how, if your Mercury is really strong, your life is going to be surrounded by vampires trying to suck all your abilities and, giving you tasks. And, people understand how useful Mercury is, and everyone uses Mercury. Mercury in the birth chart, also is highly dependent on who he's conjoined with or neighboring with or what other planets are nearby. He'll take on the effects of those planets. My Mercury is exactly conjoined my Mars. Does that come through to you? You should hear me when I'm, I can lacerate people with my tongue. Or I can educate them. What do you want me to do? Your call. Ball's in your court. But basically this image is a perfect representation of the philosophical Mercury to me. Everyone's kind of like lost in their own dramas. They don't even know that they're not even actually dead, these poor fucks. The illusion is so deep. The Mercury temperament. Okay, so what is Mercury like? I want to date him. What is he like? I want to date them. As Mercury is transmuted, a sense of trust and sublimity arises. Unlimited sustenance. I mean, truly, you start to be your own food. You become the process of immortality starts now. You see the spiral shape of the snakes. That's your DNA structure. It is our core foundation. So if you can harness telomerization or all these, immunological decaying process or cellular decaying process, or you can sort of master life. Are we going there with nanotechnology? You bet your ass we are. The boundary between personal and transpersonal. That's Mercury. It marks the beginning of the world of spirit. The forces of Mercury in a person's temperament yearn for sulfur, divine passion, but not worldly emotions. Mercury's transcending all that. And you can tell he's not bothered by these people crying, is he? He knows his duty. He knows his divine purpose. He knows the divine function of death. And he understands the divine function of Hades. And he's not bothered. And as such, you kind of see mercurial types be kind of flippant and non-committed and flighty and uninvested and uninterested, and they give advice before really they listen all that much, and they might interrupt you a lot, and they're just shitty friends. And sorry if all your friends are Geminis, undeveloped Geminis, because Geminis are amazing when they actually develop that, but when they're not, I'm sorry y'all, but y'all are impossible to be around. Impossible. And I'm impossible to be around, so I should know. Wrong sulfur at this stage, and this is where it's important. I think this is where we get those negative qualities of Mercury. It yields an unyielding, or it produces an unyielding predatory intelligence, and you have a major superiority complex, even if you're hiding it from everyone. I see you. The alchemists worked with Mercury temperament through the process of fermentation. So this is what's interesting, is because it's the child, why is it all of this? Why does it represent the alchemical process of death and decay? Because that is a new life, that is a new birth. When plant matter is fermenting, it starts to form a little film, this peacock shining rainbow film of residue that starts to show that what? Alcohol is being produced. The spirit of this sludgy reality is starting to, burst forth. Just like the lotus blossom erupts out of mud, so too does Mercury have to develop. And look at his consciousness, that orb around his head. You know that's when the artist is representing, this is a divine intelligence. So that's that lotus, that blissful thinking, right? That Krishna consciousness. Mercury is Krishna consciousness. That ISKCON shit, what they're talking about is Mercury. Bam, how do you like them apples? Vishnu takes on the forms of the planets. You don't know that, you need to know that. You need to study Jyotish, you need to figure this shit out. You need to understand, even if you don't worship Vishnu, that's not the point. You need to look and see what they're doing with Vishnu and how they're attributing, his avatars, right? Avatar Last Airbender. You like that? You like them apples? Then you need to study Jyotish, and you need to get into astrology. You need to start studying the elements in a serious way. Stop watching Nickelodeon, get off your ass, and start studying alchemy. Come to the dark side. So, God, I'm so sick of y'all. The alchemists, what? This is a shitty slide. What am I doing? Am I drunk? Was I drunk when I made that? Yes. I make these during happy hour, by the way. So healing with Mercury, erethism is Mad Hatter's disease. Y'all know Johnny Depp in that movie, Alice in Wonderland? He was so amazing physically, but terribly, as an actor, he's just terrible now. He should have quit years ago, but now he's bankrupt and can't make movies. He even got kicked off Pirates of the Caribbean. But that was his cash cow. He spends like 45 grand on wine a month. Anyway, he's got Mad Hatter's disease, Johnny Depp, because he snorts mercury. Mercury was used to prevent fur rot in hats, right, and furs. So they would preserve the furs and then cause the people to wear the fur hats to go rigid, depressed, retarded. They impaired your memory, gave you anxiety, agitation, tremors, and slurred your speech. Your motor skills, which Mercury rules, were impaired. Wow, that makes so much sense. However, you'll see kids that won't die from Mercury, and they'll drink it, put it in their mouth, touch it. Why don't they die? Mercury moves through the nervous system, not the blood. Mercury moves through the nervous system, which Mercury rules. Do you understand this, how beautiful this system is? But, I think if you're a child, I think Mercury doesn't hurt children. Children play with Mercury all the time, and they don't get sick. Why? I see it all the time. All my friends have put mercury in their mouth and their ears and their eyes and touched it for long periods of time, broken open thermometers. But then you get adults coming into contact in very few amounts, are very small, dropping it on a glove. There was a researcher that dropped a bit of mercury on her hand and it went through her glove and she just fucking lost her shit. I think that's because you have unresolved emotions and your alchemical, your psychological state, your spiritual state is so repressed that mercury works on your body and becomes poisonous in for whatever method, for whatever way. And I think children don't have this calcinated, leaden bitterness, saltiness, right? The salts of the body are less crystallized within the tissue state due to trauma and you know, the being worn down by the illusions of the world which you have invested in every breath of your being. Every second of the day you invest in this reality. And Mercury will strip you from this reality with death. Mercury rules the vocal organs, throat, lungs, lymph glands, and the Mercury talismans give mental clarity, adaptability, and nervine regulation of rhythm. So basically all bodily rhythms, coming and going, up and down, in and out, inhalation, exhalation. The cosmic chaos from which the universe sprang is called Rasasara, or the Sea of Mercury. Now, cow-herding peoples in India who worship the Gopal, the beautiful little baby Krishna, probably with time the story started changing because Vedic culture has been, you know, there's pre-Vedic culture that was morphed into this Krishna consciousness. Krishna wasn't even a thing way back when. He became a thing. He's not the true. He's just the now true. Got it? Sorry. But anyway, the Sea of Milk was not a sea of milk. It was a sea of mercury, from which Dhanvantari emerges carrying the immortal liquid Lakshmi. And during that whole process where they're churning the ocean of mercury. Anyway, these goat herders called it milk eventually. And milk is a symbol for immortality, just like mercury is. Yeah, milk is nourishing to the body. Milk is great for babies. Milk has a lot of signatures with mercury. But I just think if you don't see the point of the metal, you're missing the entire point of the whole fucking alchemy. But whatever works for your culture will be favored, not necessarily what works for the overall spiritual growth of mankind. So as such, if you only study one religion, you don't know anything at all. If you only study one religion, you don't know anything at all. If you only study one religion, you don't know anything at all. I had to say it 3 times because it's true. Mercury was used by Paracelsus to treat syphilis. And a lot of other shit, really. And eventually it was used to treat HIV and AIDS. It does have a sexual affinity. Mercury is sexual. When it absorbs the healing effects of copper, and it is added to sulfur to make cinnabar, which is used to make red dyes, red paint. And that woodblock print that I was showing in the first video of the Japanese samurai, cinnabar was probably used in those red pigments. Yeah, so that longevity, immortality, access. Makaradvaja oil is infamous to treat paralysis, hemiplegia, nervous disorders, tuberculosis, cancer, and immune deficiency. It removes possessions, obsessions, fixed ideas, and mental viscosity, and deep putrefying depressions. According to certain Indian sects, this mercury in the oil allows the body to digest otherwise only partly digestible elements of gold and silver within the blood. So it sort of activates the higher metals within you and your blood, the gold and the silver. It makes it more readily available for your organs. So it is said to allow concentrated, solidified sunlight to gild the body's immune system and aura. That's because mercury can't act on its own. So its medical function isn't mercury. It's what it does to the other metals within your body. Wow, that makes sense. Wait, was I actually done? I might have more to say. Let me see. Oh, the Buddha. The Buddha took, there's stories that the Buddha took mercury stuff, and that's all he ate. That was his primary source of food. And when he died, he made his physician, who was a famous, anyway, he was an alchemist. He's famous. Obviously, anyway, if you're Buddha's doctor, you're probably smarter than the Buddha. Oops, I said it. I mean, not that the Buddha was smart, he was just spiritual. He was just awakened, right? Buddha means to awaken. And certainly Mercury can deal with different states of consciousness, from, right? Hades to Olympus, Hades to heaven, asleep to awake, personal relationships, and also like the transformational axis. Transportation, transmutation. Okay, so now I'm done with that. Silver is the moon. Sweet. Silver bear, silver bull. I think these are lunar animals. I think just because the bear is so cute. and hibernates, and is so fatty. And then the bull is also rich and has a long time association with the moon. The moon is exalted in Taurus. You know, astrology is inception is when Taurus was the herald of spring. Taurus stars were the herald of spring, and then its opposite Scorpio with fire, or with autumn, if that makes sense. Silver is female, aquamarine, moonstone, and also female in the sense like feminine, receptive. Silver is aquamarine, moonstone, and beryl. It represents the psychic capacity. That makes sense, right? Mercury was the throat, and then if you're gonna your own personal psychic realm, your own personal your interpersonal communication with your own divine intelligence and your own divine intuition. It's kind of lonely up here in the third eye, actually. It's the pituitary system, the pituitary gland, which oversees and regulates all the hormonal functions in the body. And hormones travel through water and the blood, which the moon and Mars work with the blood. The moon is also the more like the breast and insulation and some things as well, and our protective modes. So there's a protective quality to the moon, and silver is protective in those ways as well and shares those qualities. Right, when I'm talking about a planet and then I'm talking about its metal, the qualities are across the board. They are synonymous. Got it? So if I'm saying silver and I actually mean the moon, that's not my job it's not my job to know what I'm saying. It's your job to know what I'm saying. Okay? Silver is brilliant and bright, but it tarnishes black when it's exposed to polluted air and water. When it's not polluted, it doesn't tarnish. Heat and electricity, it's the most conductive of all this metal. They learned to separate silver from lead as early as 3000 BC. Luna Philosophorum was the name of alchemical silver, this living spirit of silver, which they thought was the refined essence of heat and water. So silver is used in the making of mirrors, and the lunar metal is best reflector of visible light now. That is true. As such, the moon reflects the sun's light. And illuminates the dark places of the mind. Intuition. Titus Burckhardt says, I wonder if he was an alchemist. The moon and the metal silver was considered to be analogous to the soul in its state of pure receptivity. Whereas the soul transmuted and illumined by the spirit was analogous to the sun and the metal gold. Paired with magnesium, it erupts into a flashbang grenade. Silver metal has a great affinity for the oceans, and most of the silver on our planet is dissolved in the seawater equally. So that's perfect. And gold is most equally distributed within the soil. Perfect for the earth, sun. So the realm of the earth is ruled by the sun, the realm of the waters is the ocean. Get this. When melted and rehardened, silver craters form as oxygen bubbles explode to resemble the face of the moon, another lunar signature. And it is often associated with the deposits of lead and copper. So Saturn and Venus. And in Indian mythology, these planets are friends of the moon. Wow. 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 Do you understand how, like, if you look at the planetary relationships, the natural planetary relationships in Ayurveda, in Jyotish, which is Indian astrology, you will see that these planetary relationships are associated with the metals and how they work alchemically. Like, it took me 4 years to figure that out. I thought it was just arbitrary shit, and that's what I would read in these groups. Like, we don't really understand how these natural planetary relationships work. But it's pretty obvious now that if you have an alchemical perspective, you can layer, like, this alchemical shit is a lens. You can apply this to herb making, to ceremonial altar making. What am I saying here? But overall, silver metal is the most organic of the metals. Its structures tend to resemble living plant structures rather than more mechanical mineral forms, and it's found in plants. Some plants. And you can see that beautiful picture down below with, the deer hanging out with Selene, or was her name Artemis? Artemis. Yeah, there's different forms of the god. Each goddess is a different phase of the moon. Hecate, Selene, Diana, Artemis. Is she new moon? Is she like new moon is the younger one, and then the more full is like the okay. The goddess of abundance, and then as she's waning, she becomes Hecate, the death one. That's like takes things away from you, and it's an old crone, and she pushes you down a cliff just to teach you a lesson. Psychologically, the transmutation of the silver chakra produces a lasting mystical state, absolutely purified of habitual or egotistic forces. This is a pure state of like divine consciousness, like the deer, the doughy-eyed wanderer, the dewy morning one. Intuition reaches its highest state of perfection with this temperament, and one begins to move beyond the limitations of space and time. How many silver temperament people do you know? Maybe Yogananda? Maybe, yeah, I think Yogananda was the embodiment of silver. Truth. The feeling is one of intense connection to the cosmos. In the last stages of transmutation, a sublimation of spiritual forces occurs, which lays the groundwork for the formation of a second body. So it's still gaseous. So it hasn't formed that gold that is your golden aura. It's that still gaseous state. So there's more of a manipulability with it, but also it's a kind of vulnerable. Do you understand? Because you can you can go back into fermentation quite easily. You can slip back down into sludge of mercury in that putrid state of the child being born out of all that has been, so you can slide back down into a reverse alchemical process, and that until you're back into lead, and you lose your shit. Depression, stagnation. The alchemists worked with, this is called distillation, this. Healing with it, it's been used since 4000 BC. Persian leached silver atoms into their water. Egyptian used silver wrap for wounds. Druids lines their drinking bottles, or they're drinking, were they bottles or were they bladders? Anyway, for disinfectant. Medieval royalty held better immunity because they actually used silverware. So the plague was going on and they were like, oh, I'm fine. Now maybe there was tin being used elsewhere, but tin maybe wasn't as successful as silver in preventing disease or spoilage. Because you can put silver coins in milk. Okay, milkman. It is sedative. It's sedative. It's sedative, cooling, emetic, and moisturizing. So it has all these kind of sort of life supportive qualities. Moisture increases life. Coolness is or mildness is good for life, right? You don't want extremes, and the moon is tends to be more balanced. So she goes through several phases. Healing with silver, this is great for past life memories, since you can understand why you act the way you do, and it can help you see through the lunar veil of thoughts and emotions. It's a high priestess in tarot. She doesn't tell you what to do. She just shows you, your options. And certainly silver is a perceptive metal. It's helpful. Actually, I'm going to take some right now. Is there some of it? I take it in colloidal solution. You can do that for gold or other things, which is basically electrifying the metal until it's evenly distributed and won't settle down into the bottom of water. That's a very effective way to treat the waters of the body. You shouldn't take it too long. Overall, the effect is cooling on the body, but every metal is heating in the blood. Every metal is heating in the blood. Every metal is heating in the blood. But why does it say cooling? Because its overall cumulative effect reduces inflammation. It's helpful in astral projection and finding soul medicine. There's in curanderismo and curanderos, they know there's some states of susto or ojo, or maybe, you'll know what I'm talking. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. This, if you're a Mexican, you get it. There's the soul, when you're scared, erupts out of the body and goes and hides. And if you're scared, if you're highly traumatized, that soul may not be able to come back. It just runs and runs and runs and runs and runs away from you. So if you need a soul call, silver can help with that. It's that werewolf within us that protects the harvest of our consciousness. The healing with silver also, it represents you're going to be working on the female reproductive organs, menstruation, the breasts, hormonal imbalances, stomach, watery body fluids like slime. Did I say slime? I probably meant semen. Yeah, tears or just slime if you jizz slime, and digestive secretions. Two popular homeopathic medicines derived from silver are argentum nitricum and argentum metallicum. These are famous. Silver oil is used in disorders of brain and the cerebellum. Oh, interesting. The moon rules the brain. They reduce stress, balance the emotions, improve memory, treat nervous disorders and epilepsy. They improve both melancholia and mania. It was also, right, because the extremes, it brings them back to the middle. It was also used as a physical purgative and mental purifier. Said to affect the subconscious mind, you can see into the past more clearly. It gives you a sense of home within yourself, right? It's like the crab, the cancer crab, or maybe an animal that lives in a shell, like a clam or an oyster, or are these called crustaceans, or are they called bivalves? Anyway, it gives a feeling of grace and sensitivity and enhanced imagination. Sometimes oversensitivity. These people sometimes might have to retreat from the world, not necessarily, or enter societies where they're more like, where they're of like mind. But they will enter loneliness, the silver mindset, or the silver temperament, but not really be lonely, right? It's a different quality of loneliness. Yeah, I also kind of think Krishna is a bit lunar too. So I don't know. I'm kind of mixed. I know that there's avatars for each planet, but I see moon signatures. Actually, maybe Krishna's just all of them. I see copper Krishna, signatures too. But there's a lunar quality to him. I like talking about him because I think when I talk about him, he gives me gifts, and I'm selfish. But look at this dude. He's Krishna, this old Santa Claus Krishna. He's actually real. You should worship him. Stop worshiping paintings. I think he's dead now, though. This dude was like, let me just take a bunch of silver forever. And the blue you see in his skin is literally just the silver in his skin reflecting light. Perma-blue. So what about gold? Sun, Leo, amber, diamond, topaz. It's your crown chakra. It's the gold aura. It's the thing that extends furthest outside of you. It is the thing first people come into contact with if you have one developed. That's why when we see these spiritual teachers and these spiritual masters, what do you always see? People say that their energy extended, you could feel them coming a mile away. Like, oh my God, what's Yogananda? Sri Yukteswar. Yogananda's guru. You know him. The immortal metal. Yeah, so gold is extremely heavy, ductile, malleable, sectile, and soft. It's not suitable for tools or work. Just like a person who's like in a state of complete samadhi is not really useful for anything except being a beacon of light and a beacon of consciousness who affects everyone around him, but isn't inherently useful. It won't associate very readily with the lesser metals, but it chills with silver and it chills with mercury. The immortal metal is endlessly recycled. What we have of it, we have of it. And it's pretty much the same quantities as when we first started fucking with it. It cannot be damaged by heat. So you need to dissolve it with nitric and hydrochloric acid. It's 6 times rarer than silver. It takes about 3 tons of gold ore to extract an ounce of gold metal. Can you imagine? 3 tons of gold ore. Most of the gold is evenly distributed in the soil. Au is its periodic name, aurum gold, congealed light of the sun and stars. It's non-tarnishing or rusting, which is why we call it immortal. Almost every culture, their main deity is associated with gold, and a lot of currencies are set by it. Our country is. Egyptians were trying to awaken the spirit of copper to become gold. Diplosis was something that was developed in medieval times where you could, or was that? No, wait, that was probably Egyptian times too. They doubled gold by using its seed, and they added 2 parts gold to 1, they added 2 parts gold to 1 part silver and 1 part copper. And then you add all together, and then it's like you almost double your quantity of gold with heat. So it's called seeding the other metals. So that was like an alchemical thing too, right? Changing metals into the other, which is cool. Medieval people were like, oh, what about mercury to gold? And that's kind of where that axis came in. In the 1960s, this was successful because mercury is next to gold on the periodic table. So they were correct. You can change mercury into gold. You have to knock out a proton in one of the mercury atoms with a particle accelerator, and that creates minute shards of gold. Can you imagine this? Imagine if they actually were like, realized that they were right. They were never able to do it, but we eventually achieved this highest form of alchemy through particle acceleration. Wow, woo. Standard for monetary systems. It's an excellent, I already said that. It's an excellent reflector of infrared energy. Wow, the sun is infrared energy. Gold salts are sensitive to the sun and its strength. Lily Kalisko said that shows that with her gold salts and how, like, on eclipses, gold salts react differently. But what's really cool is so do silver salts. And how they react is really interesting because silver changes patterns on eclipses, and gold changes color on eclipses. So that shows the perfect example. The pattern of our souls is silver, and the color of our spirit is the sun. And it's through our spirit that we manipulate and transmutate and transfigure and evolve the soul, right? The soul is inert and kind of doesn't want to move around. It kind of is happy where it is. The soul is happy with its state. It's the spirit inside you that's yearning for transformation, not the feminine. The feminine in you, the receptive in you, doesn't have that inherent urge. All of that within you is the solar spirit. So again, I wanted to show you, this is like an alchemist, like, oh wow, I'm boiling. Oh wow, I'm distilling gold. Or what is he distilling? I don't know. But you can kind of see this like weird raven under his desk, and like this weird, like these weird gnome people, which I'm wondering if it's like previous states of doubt or uncertainty, or like I don't really even know how to like interpret this image. Because alchemical paintings always are rich with like symbols, and you know, like we have this flame that's on, but then we have this flame that's off. This candle's not being lit. We have this staff, this golden staff, this rod, which is very phallic, which is very alchemical. It's almost as if he's contemplating the vertical axis, right? He doesn't really seem like he's in the room. He's lost in thought. That's because he's an alchemist and he's ascending the vertical plane. But then there's all these like lower or sort of more like, I think these are just versions of him. And of course we have Saturn under here, who's the crow, right? The black crow. And Saturn and gold are the same thing. We already talked about that. Within lead, within that first state of that first metal, we have the whole transformational journey. And then gold represents its fruits. The fruits of Saturn are the sun. Mm-hmm. In astrology, we see Leo is opposite Aquarius. Leo, ruled by the sun, is opposite Aquarius, ruled by Saturn. Saturn and the sun don't get along. In fact, you see conjunctions in the progress chart of HIV and AIDS. Bam, that progressed sun hits the natal Saturn, or hits the progressed Saturn. Bam, you'll see it. You'll see the HIV infection, or a really chronic illness. Like I've only been looking at HIV, so that's what I'm finding. But chronicity. So they don't like each other, and they snuff out. Saturn blocks the light of the sun. You don't want to put them together, but you want to move them from one to the other. So what about the golden temperament? What was the golden temperament of that guy sitting in the chair? He's probably ambitious, courageous, self-reliant. He has dignity, authority, and the ability to manage himself and others, even the most unruly people. Probably those little gnomes under his desk, right? He probably manages them. They probably work for him. They probably are problematic until he gives them the tasks that unlock their potential. That is the gold within you. You can transmute any problem, any obstacle, any tribulation can become a greater understanding of yourself and ultimately God within you. God meaning, of course, you. You are God. You are God. You can be God. Jesus was not God. The sun is our internal temperament. Can this be altered? That's what I kind of wonder. Is like, if it's this immortal thing, like, Should we strive to develop something past gold? Is that even a thing? Can you conceptualize that maybe gold isn't the final stage? Is there like a platinum thing, a form of gold that you can, or an alloy of gold? Fuck, I don't know. The danger at this phase of transformation, though, when you're using gold, is that the individual becomes too focused on the workings above and forgets his or her connection to the real world. So that's kind of like what he's doing too. You're going to be alienated, maybe, your own spirit. Certainly. It can get you into a lot of trouble being awakened. Persecution of every single awakened person that has come forward or like just tried to have disciples, right? Cut your head off. Because the world of illusion can't exist when you're actively burning away the shadows of the Iron Age. You know, and that's true. It's like once you reach the golden state of alchemy, there's going to be every effort, every test to try to pull you out of that state. And it's going to be so much, probably heavier consequences for going back down the ladder. And once you reach gold and you go back, there are heavier penalties. Because you'll go back to the leaden qualities of despair, poor self-esteem, lack of confidence, and impurity. But gold brings health, wealth, happiness through synchronistic responses from the universe. It's being aligned with the events around you. It's seeing signs, seeing the signatures of God where you can. Because they're everywhere. If you go against these archetypal powers at this level of achievement, wait, why am I doubling up? I double is up. Anyway, also, you know, here's what you're gonna, look, let's just put it this way. You need to suppress your suppressible urges. Forget everything I said before this. Forget the metals. This doesn't matter. This is all bullshit. This is Ayurveda. Dharanya Vega. The Vegas are the urges. Urges, you know, urges that you don't, okay, so you have urges that you can suppress and you have urges that you cannot. Fart, pee, poop, those are urges. You should not, sneezing, yawning. If you suppress those urges, those physical bodily urges, you will get sick. If you don't fart, if you don't pee, if you don't poop, you'll die. But you can suppress some. You want to suppress lobha, shoka, bhaya, krodha, mana, nirlajja, matsarya, raga. Raga is attachment. So greed, grief. So it's like the 7 deadly sins. Those are all the suppressible urges. And then like in that movie with Brad Pitt, you can see like all the consequences of maybe those urges becoming causative factors for diseases. And in Ayurveda, we say they're hetus. So there are these black stones that you use in olden days, in ancient times, when you would, you know, try to test the quality of gold, you'd strike the gold or like put it onto, you know, a black stone to see how much content was in that specimen, how pure that gold was. And then here we can see acids being dropped on that for a further exam. So we see, oh, the gold is brilliant, but how many carats is it? So we put an acid on it and we see, oh, 10 carat test, stands up to the 14 carat test, but it didn't necessarily pass the 18 carat test, or is, you know, so it's going to be 14. Healing with gold. Chrysotherapy is healing with gold. Egyptian dentistry used gold for fillings. It tonifies agni, which is your digestive fire. In Alexandria, liquid gold tonic was really famous. Gold salves were used for skin ulcers, and they still are. They're still amazing. You can use, yeah, like chronic skin ulcers that don't go away, especially in immunodeficiency diseases, which I specialize in. If you have HIV, you should be emailing me. You need to email me right now, because I will help you. Paracelsus developed several gold formulations, many ones. You have gold waters, gold pills to comfort sore limbs and arthritis. It's overall very soothing. It is heating, though. Gold coins can alter cooking in liquids. Gold is the only heavy metal that has a right-hand atomic spin. If you don't know what that means, that's your homework. And therefore easily tolerated by the body. So its therapeutic effects are tonic, heating, cardiac, and diaphoretic. It makes you sweat. The gold is not found in plants in any amounts. Interesting, right? The only one. Solar essences give great ambition, courage, self-reliance, dignity, authority, and the ability to manage. connecting with the indestructible in you. This would be like Jesus after he went into the desert for 40 days. I shall not tempt the Lord my God. I do not want the powers of the earth. I do not want all the cheese. So, okay, Jesus, you don't like cheese? You must be God. The Buddha, after his 3 temptations, right? He sat under that tree. He was like, I'm going to be Buddha. And then all of a sudden, Maya, this like demon, or this demon wielding Maya, the forms of Maya, tempted Buddha with lust and some other types of shit. Lust would be the one that would give me. That's the one. I have a problem. I wonder which metal I am. Okay, so solar herbs can be of seemingly miraculous aid in cases of apathy, lethargy, and unproductivity. So if your life is really just miserable and because you don't have a direction, because you don't know, why am I here? What is my true essence? The creative principle within us can be enhanced to a great degree by the sun. Here's a chart of all the alchemical symbols. I think this is a cool one. I'm just gonna let y'all stare at it. Isn't it beautiful? There's nickel, copper, zinc, alum, phosphorus, sulfur, salt. This is an amalgam, oxygen, nitre, carbon, and then oil of vitriol, eggshell, what does it say? Corpuscle, wick, tallow, soapstone, platinum, silver, and gold. Winter, autumn, summer, spring, right? So there were like alchemical symbols were used to sort of, that's how this information got to us. And we can see the symbol for Libra, which is sublimate. Maybe this is Libra, sublimation, yeah. Interesting to me. Sublime, the sublime in us is Libra. So look at these, take a gander, work with them, use the zodiac signs and processes and other processes. You can combine them to make larger glyphs. And certainly you can create whole networks of talismanic symbols. If you start stacking these up on each other and rearranging them and noticing the order of operations of one higher than the other and really thinking about the symbology, if you really go deep into alchemy, you can manipulate the world around you in a way that you never thought was possible before. You can manipulate situations to better suit what you need and your consciousness needs. You can also use it in low form and manipulate others and seduce others and hex others. So really there's, the whole world is open to you, and it will be how you interact with alchemy shows a lot about where you are in the stage of the 7 processes of the 7 orders of operations that we've named, right? So all the way, all the way from lead to gold. Thank you for bearing with me during listening to me kind of ramble and get stoned and talk about this, because I'm really passionate about alchemy now that I've seen how it correlates to Ayurveda, and I've seen it's been a missing link. And I was so ready to say, fuck the medieval tradition, fuck the Egyptians. I was so stuck on India that I didn't realize that a lot of what's in Ayurveda and a lot of what's in the Vedas and astrology and Jyotish, a lot of it can be answered by the West and is answered by the West. And it makes perfect sense. You have to combine opposites to really get somewhere. And you can't just look at one thing. You can't just look to one form of alchemy. You kind of have to look at the bigger picture. But this one is just more accessible, I guess, to white people. And if you're watching this in America, or if you're a Westerner, you might be more associated with Greek, Roman, medieval, that kind of bullshit. But thank you so much for checking in. Check out some of my other videos. I don't know what's coming next, but stay tuned.